Well, in this video, we're going to go over how I paint things. I'm in the middle of a boat project, and I'm starting on the trailer. And I've seen it come up in some of the Facebook groups that I'm on, and it seems like people are kind of mystified by spraying, spraying paint. They think that seems like there's maybe two camps, basically. The guys that really don't care, when they paint stuff, they just slap whatever they got on there and be done with it, and something is better than nothing. And then there seems to be the other camp where it's got to be sanded down to bare metal. You got to use etching primer. You got to sand it multiple coats. You got to, I don't know, just go overboard with masking and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars and use, the highest quality products. And I guess it really all boils down to what you expect from a project and what are your goals for your paint job. So like this boat I did about 3 years ago, and I fished the heck out of this boat. It gets a lot of use and it gets some abuse. And I don't use my fenders, the bumpers, the little white squishy bumpers. I don't use my fenders when I'm pulling up the docks and stuff, and I'm fishing on public water, so the docks are all beat up. And it gets dented, and it gets dinged, and it gets banged into stuff. And it doesn't really bother me. I want to use it. It looks good. Even from this distance, it looks pretty good, I think. Paint job looks great. And I'm going to show you guys how I painted this boat and what I'm doing on the new one. And, it's simple. It's reasonably easy. It's a good quality paint job. It holds up well. And this is what I do when I'm painting farm equipment, tractors, implements, boats, trailers. Do a lot of trailer frames. Steel, aluminum, cast iron. So far it's worked pretty good. If I need to paint something, this is what I do. Wood, treat it all kind of the same. So to begin the process, I'll take you out here and I'll show you this boat frame I'm working on. It's a little windy today. This is not ideal. But to begin the process, I took everything I wanted off of the boat. I took it off. All the little, like the chain, the lights, get all the wires off, everything that I don't want to paint that's pretty easy to remove, go ahead and remove. Then hit it with a pressure washer. I don't sand stuff down to bare metal. I figure if like that white paint right there or that black splotchy paint, if it's adhered enough that it made it through me pressure washing with a 3200 psi pressure washer, then it's adhered enough to that metal that the new paint will stick to that. That will stick to the metal. Everything will be hunky-dory, and that's how it works out. So I hit this with a 3200 psi pressure washer. I wouldn't use anything less than 2500 if you want to get sort of the same results. So hit it with a pressure washer and knock off anything that's loose, and anything that's stuck on there real well is stuck on there well enough for our paint job. Go ahead and then mask off anything that like I removed that portion of the jack that I don't want paint because it's simple to remove. It was easier for me to pop that snap ring off and pull that jack off than it would be for me to mask that whole jack off. So I just popped the jack off. Now these rollers, the way that they're put on, it's easier for me to mask the rollers than it is to remove the rollers. So that's why I masked those. And so now I'm all set up and I'm ready for paint. You'll notice where I'm painting. I'm painting outside. You can paint on the gravel, but you're going to turn your gravel colors. If you don't care if your gravel's painted different colors, then paint it on the gravel. That's what I would recommend. I don't want to paint my new gravel, so I'm going to put it out here in the grass. Well, the grass is going to turn gray. I'm spraying gray today. The grass is going to turn gray. It's not going to be real bad in most spots, but in a week when the grass grows, I'll mow it. It'll be less gray. In another week, the grass is going to grow some more. I'll mow it again, and you won't see any gray out here anymore. So you can tell I've also removed the wheels. Why did I remove the wheels? Well, it's easier to take them off than it is to mask the whole thing. So every project's going to be different. Just try not to overwork yourself too much. Now, what are we going to be using to paint? You can pick all this stuff up at Harbor Freight, Home Depot, Tractor Supply. Those three places, between the three of them, you should be set. You're going to need a air compressor. Now, you can use a little pancake compressor. You could probably get away with a teeny tiny little thing with no tank. I don't know. I've never tried anything with no tank. I would recommend at least like a 3 or 5 gallon pancake compressor. I'm using, I don't know, that's a 25 gallon single cylinder, nothing fancy. That's a pretty typical air compressor. I'm not using a dryer. I'm not going to use any filters on it. And I'm going to use this Harbor Freight spray gun. I picked this up years ago for 15 bucks. You can see it's got some green, some black, some yellow, some gray. So I think I paid 15 bucks for it 5 or 7 years ago. I just bought one the other day just in case my old one craps out on me. I paid $18 for it now. So they've gone up a couple bucks. But it's a good gun. I've used I've never used like a high dollar automotive gun. Because if I was painting Lamborghinis, yeah, throw everything I'm going to tell you right out the window. But I'm not. I'm just painting stuff that I want to look good around the farm here. So that gun works well for what I shoot through it. And what I shoot through it is Rust-Oleum. I don't use anything but Rust-Oleum paints. Rust-Oleum makes this professional enamel stuff. They make different lines of sort of seems like the same paint. So I'm going to use Rust-Oleum paint, and I'm going to cut it 4 parts of paint to 1 part of acetone. Now, the cans used to say years ago when you read the directions, the cans used to tell you how to mix it to spray it. Now all they tell you is under the spray gun, follow the spray gun directions carefully. Well, I'll tell you, in my experience, I called Rust-Oleum customer support years ago. And the lady when I talked to, I said, I remember that the cans used to say something that the cans now don't, and they haven't said anything for a while. She said 3 to 1 is as thin as they ever recommended, and 4 to 1 is typically what they recommend. So that's what I always do, 4 to 1. And it used to recommend acetone or mineral spirits. Well, you'll talk to guys that have great results out of mineral spirits. I have never thinned my paint with mineral spirits. I've always used acetone. And again, that was on the recommendation from Rust-Oleum on that phone call. She said, that acetone is a part of Rust-Oleum paint. So the best thing to thin the paint with is what's already in it, which is acetone. So they're about the same price. Acetone and paint thinner, mineral spirits are not much different in price. You can use what you prefer, but acetone is what I use. And then you can pick these little mix cups up. The way that you use these is across the top there, you see it's got all these different graphs. It's got 3 to 1 to 1, it's got 3 to 1, 530. I don't even know what that means. What we're looking for is 4 to 1 to 1. Now I'm not mixing three things, so I only really need 4 to 1. So what I'm going to do is, if I want to mix up to the 6 line here, which is probably what I'm going to do, I want to mix this cup just about 3/4 or half full every time, because that's about what that holds, the gun. So I'm probably going to mix up to this 6. So I'm going to pour paint in till it gets to number 6, and then I'm going to pour the acetone in on top of that till I get to number 6 on this chart. If we were adding a hardener or something that was, 4 to 1 to 1, then we would pour in that third thing would be, this third bar here. If we only wanted to mix up a little paint, say we get to the end of our project and we're nearly done, I don't need a whole cup full again, I only need just a little bit. I got, maybe a wheel to do or something, I just need a little bit, and we don't want to mix up a whole cup full. Well, if I don't want to mix up to number 6, maybe I just want to mix up a little bit. I'll come down here to number 1. I'll put paint in until it comes up to the number 1 line. Then I'll put my acetone in until it comes up to that number 1 line. So that's how you use one of these mix cups. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to mix up some paint here. I'm going to dump it in the, they sell stands for these things. You can buy a stand for it. What I have found is that I just clamp the handle, don't clamp your trigger, don't clamp any of your valves or anything. Just clamp the handle in that vise kind of gently, and that'll hold your cup vertical, and you can pour it in from the cup then. I'm going to make a mess on the counter here. You can see I don't have much masking. I don't have, really much going on to keep my mess sort of contained. Use a piece of cardboard because I am going to mix my paint up with this stir. I'm going to use my drill and this stir in that gallon because that gallon's been sitting around for about 3 years. It hadn't been used. So it's going to be very much separated when I open it up. So I'm going to use this to stir the paint up, get it good and stirred up. Then I'm going to mix the paint in the cup and all that. I'm going to set my real dirty stuff because this is going to be oozing paint. I'm going to set it on the cardboard. Anything that's real messy, I'll set it on the cardboard. I expect to get dribbles and runs and stuff on my workbench, but when we're all done, when I'm throwing my cardboard away, I'm cleaning all my tools up and stuff, then I'll use mineral spirits to clean up my workbench, all my tools, things like that, and I'll show you all that as we go. So for right now, all I've done for preparation on that trailer is pressure washed it. I didn't do any sanding. I didn't do any I'm not going to do any priming. I pressure washed it, masked off what I don't want to get color on. So now I'm going to start shooting paint. Pressure on my tank, I'm not going to adjust it. It's up to about 110 PSI. That's where I always use it. And again, I'm not using any dryers or filters. I've used them in the past, and they don't seem like they matter at all for what I'm doing. Okay, so here's all the mess it makes. You can see this is how I was talking about clamp your gun up in the vise. I don't have the fitting in there. I don't have the handle or any of the valves in there, just the handle. And that's how I fill my gun. So you can see it's got overspray and everything on it. I'm going to clean all this up with mineral spirits here in just a minute, and I'll show you what it looks like after the fact. But one thing I forgot to mention, I also use my stir on the drill when I'm mixing paint in the cup. And because it's been thinned out, it doesn't make much mess. You can just lay that stir right there on that piece of cardboard. One thing I also forgot to mention earlier, when you dump your paint in, dumping it out of the can directly in there, I'm using a rag then to clean up the paint around the edge of the can. Then dump your acetone in, mix it up, dump your cup into your gun, then take your rag again and wipe down on the inside of your mix line here, because you want this to be as clear plastic as possible so you can see when you're mixing up the next batch. So don't let your paint set up in your cup and get hard. As far as mess out here, really didn't make much. It's a little windier than I would like it to be today, but it worked out. So again, you can see there's you can see if you get right up on it, there's rust pits, there's weld spatter because I didn't clean the spatter off them welds. There's little pits where paint has flaked off, and mostly it's rust pitting. But it looks good enough for me, and it looks good enough, I would guess, for 95% of fishing boats. From 10 feet away, you don't notice it, and going down the highway, you sure as heck don't notice it. So I'm going to go ahead and it's getting tacky right now. Actually, there's a couple of bugs stuck to it, which is not the end of the world. Before it sets up hard, I'm going to go ahead and peel off all my masking. I like to take all my masking off while the paint is still a little bit wet. Seems like it comes off easier. As far as my bunk boards, this is just boat specific, but I went ahead and sprayed my bunk boards too. So it doesn't make much mess in the grass. Really, that one patch is the worst of it. I'll mow once or twice and you'll never even see that. So that's all the mess that it makes. I'm going to go ahead and clean up my gun and stuff, and I'll show you guys what it looks like when I'm all done in here. I'll show you the table, that it'll be nice and clean and all. So look at the bench all wiped down. There really wasn't much on the bench at all. Went ahead and wiped down the gun, and then I took the tip and the needle and spring and cap off, and that's a real simple assembly right through there. And I'm going to let that stuff soak in some mineral spirits for I don't know, a day or two whenever I get back to it again. And then I'll just blow air through it, and that'll be it. Then I can put it away. So I hope I helped you with this one, guys. If I did, click that thumbs up button. If you want to see more videos of me working on all kinds of stuff out here in the garage, click the subscribe button. Until the next video, keep on tinkering.